Imagine holding an object that whispered the secrets of kings, queens, and their most brutal betrayals. Not words exactly, more like the soft rustle of centuries breathing through metal and bone, the weight of a crown too heavy for the living, the chill of a dagger that once ended a dynasty. We are about to walk through vaults where silence is thick with confession, where forgotten royal relics lie waiting beneath layers of dust and denial. Some of them glimmer innocently behind museum glass, jeweled rings, rusted crowns, fragments of robes eaten by time. But history knows that beauty often conceals the grotesque. Every gem set in gold was paid for by a pulse that stopped too soon. Every chalice, every blade, every scepter, built not only for glory but for control. The deeper you look, the more the relics begin to behave like witnesses. The ring that slipped from a poisoned hand, the rosary clutched by a queen awaiting execution, the mirror that reflected madness more faithfully than any portrait. Each piece survived because someone died near it. These are not just objects, they are survivors of monarchy's cruel alchemy, where power became worship, and worship demanded blood. When kings feared God, they built churches. When they feared men, they built prisons. And between those two sanctuaries, relics were born. We think we own the past, that it sits neatly in glass cases, catalogued and harmless. But the past owns us. It lingers in the air of old rooms, hums through tarnished silver, waits in the hollows of rings that once sealed executions. Some say relics remember touch. Some say they hunger for it. So as we open these caskets of memory tonight, keep your eyes steady and your breath slow. Because each relic we unveil does not simply tell a story. It asks for one thing in return: remembrance. And remembrance always comes at a cost. Long after the monarchs who owned them turned to dust, the relics remained. Mute, gleaming fragments of authority refusing to die. They sleep in hidden vaults beneath Windsor and the Louvre, behind leaded glass and iron locks. Yet sometimes, when curators walk the corridors alone, they swear the air thickens, as if the objects themselves remember the weight of their master's hands. The crown of Henry VIII is one such relic. Once a circle of gold and arrogance, it was stripped of its jewels after the king's death, melted into coins to feed a bankrupt throne. But a single ruby escaped the furnace, hidden inside a monk's sleeve. Centuries later, when it surfaced in a private collection, the gem was found cracked down its heart, as though it had carried the king's temper too long. Under magnification, experts noticed a dark stain deep within the fissure. Iron residue, they said. Others whispered, blood. Another piece lies forgotten in the tower's archives. A mirror gifted to Mary Tudor. It was said she used it to study her face for signs of divine punishment. After her death, attendants reported that the mirror turned black overnight, its surface devouring candlelight instead of reflecting it. The artifact still exists, locked in storage, its glass warped like rippling water. Photographs never develop properly near it. Then there is the ring of Louis XIV, a sunburst of enamel and diamond meant to outshine mortality. When revolution swept through France, the ring was smuggled from Versailles, traded from hand to trembling hand. Each owner met misfortune. One drowned, another went mad, a third vanished from a locked room. The jewel eventually resurfaced at auction in 1919, its brilliance dimmed, its legend intact. Across Europe, relics like these linger not in museums, but in rumor. Chalices that sweat red in humidity, swords that hum faintly before storms, locks of royal hair that refuse to decay. Scholars dismiss it all as chemistry and coincidence, yet they cannot explain why the temperature drops when such items are displayed. Maybe these artifacts are restless because their stories were never finished. They were built to serve power, not survive it. Now, stripped of thrones and subjects, they are orphans of history, objects seeking purpose in a world that forgot them. Every empire leaves ghosts. Sometimes they haunt castles, sometimes they haunt what's left behind. And if you listen closely, you may hear them stirring, not from beyond the grave, but from within the gold. Power always demands a keeper, and relics always find one. Those who possess them rarely understand the bargain until it is far too late. A crown, a chalice, a dagger. These are not trophies, but contracts. Every piece carries the echo of a sovereign's will, and that echo hungers to be obeyed. In 1794, a French noble named Armand de Vaucluse bought what he believed to be a fragment of Marie Antoinette's necklace, the same diamonds once paraded as proof of her vanity. He wore it in secret, convinced it would preserve his family's prestige amid the chaos of revolution. Within weeks, his estate burned. Witnesses said the flames glinted with colors too bright for fire, scattering tiny lights like stars across the courtyard. When the ashes cooled, they found the gem fused to the marble floor, as though it had melted itself home. The Victorians were worse, turning royal artifacts into parlor curiosities. In 1857, a collector displayed a sword said to have belonged to Richard III. The blade was immaculate despite its age, its hilt tarnished like old blood. During the exhibition's opening night, the collector collapsed mid-speech, a thin line appearing across his palm where he'd brushed the steel. The wound refused to close until the sword was returned to its glass case. He kept it sealed thereafter, writing in his journal, "It cuts not flesh, but arrogance." There are stories from Russia, too. A music box once owned by Catherine the Great that plays only in darkness. From Spain, a scepter rumored to bring fever to anyone who touches it. From England, a child's locket inscribed with the motto Semper Fidelis, found beside the unmarked grave of a prince whose existence was erased from royal records. Each tale shares a pattern. The relic does not curse, it remembers, and memory, when trapped in gold and bone, corrodes like acid. To hold such an object is to inherit its confession. The weight on your palm feels heavier than metal, as if every betrayal ever whispered in its presence presses down upon your skin. Scholars call it projection, psychology shaped by myth. Yet even the skeptical admit something stirs when they handle these remnants. They describe a pulse beneath the surface, the faint heat of another heartbeat. The true price of possession is not death, it is reflection. The relics show us what power does when it forgets it is mortal. They are mirrors polished by suffering, and in their cold gleam we glimpse ourselves. Modern, civilized, certain we've moved beyond superstition. But the objects do not care for progress. They wait patiently, knowing that greed, like monarchy, always finds its way back to the throne. Hold them long enough, and you begin to understand why kings prayed before touching their own crowns. Every kingdom hides a room the public will never see, a chamber where unwanted relics are stored, sealed, or forgotten. They call it inventory, preservation, heritage. In truth, it is containment. Because even in the modern age, no monarch dares discard what once embodied the divine. Deep beneath Windsor Castle lies one such room, the Royal Treasury Annex, first catalogued in 1812 after a series of unexplained fires in the main vaults. The records describe a collection of artifacts deemed unsuitable for display, guarded not by soldiers, but by silence. Inside, according to a curator's letter, sit relics too heavy with meaning to touch. A silver crucifix warped by heat, rumored to have been clutched by Anne Boleyn on the morning of her death. A chalice rimmed with black where poison was once poured. A book of prayer whose ink bleeds anew each winter, as if unwilling to dry. Few are permitted entry. Those who have written about it speak of the air as thick as a cathedral S before storm, of lights flickering without draught. One archivist confessed in his journal that he heard the faint rustle of cloth, though no one stood beside him. Another resigned after finding fingerprints on the inside of a sealed display. When questioned, he simply said, "They wanted to be remembered." Similar vaults exist across Europe, the shadow museums of power. In Prague, the crown jewels rest behind 7 locks, each key held by a different official, so that no one person may face them alone. In Paris, beneath the Basilica of Saint-Denis, Relics of Carpathian kings are kept in a room lit only by candlelight. The curators say the wax never runs out, as though the dead pay for their own illumination. The Vatican holds its own treasury of contradictions. Reliquaries stripped from Protestant monarchs, swords blessed and cursed in equal measure, rings that once kissed the hands of executioners. Scholars whisper that faith and monarchy have always shared a vault. Both rely on belief, both punish disbelief. To walk among these artifacts is to feel watched. The relics seem to recognize authority, or its absence. Cameras malfunction, pens leak ink, guards fall ill. No one speaks above a whisper. Even the hum of electricity sounds out of place, a modern intrusion into the kingdom of decay. Perhaps the curse is simple: remembrance without forgiveness. These objects have absorbed too many prayers uttered in fear, too many vows made in blood. They do not haunt the living, they remind them. And in that reminder lies the punishment. Because every relic, no matter how holy or regal, was made by human hands. And human hands have always trembled when holding power too long. Centuries blur, but the relics endure. They migrate from palaces to museums, from chapels to auction houses, always keeping one eye fixed on the living. Each age rediscovers them under a new name: curiosity, heritage, investment. But the echo remains the same: the hum of power that refuses to die. When the Great War tore Europe apart, royal families packed their treasuries into trains heading for the countryside. Witnesses claimed that during one midnight stop, the guards heard faint choral singing from the wagons, though the crates were sealed and the night air still. Afterward, the convoy's logbook noted a single line: "Cargo restless, continue without delay." None dared open the boxes. They said the sound of mourning followed the train for miles. By the 20th century, relics of monarchy had become relics of vanity. Crowns were exhibited under electric light, their jewels dazzling but lifeless. The aura of divinity had drained away, replaced by price tags and provenance. Yet even stripped of worship, they continued to demand reverence. Visitors stood hushed before them, compelled by something older than awe, a genetic memory of obedience. No one tells you to bow before a crown. Your spine simply remembers how. In 1953, when Elizabeth II was crowned, one of the ancient orbs used in the ceremony emitted a sudden crack beneath the pressure of her hand. Experts called it a temperature fracture. Churchmen called it a warning. The photographs captured her smile, frozen just long enough to betray surprise. The orb was replaced quietly and has never been displayed since. Modern restorers swear the relics react differently depending on who handles them. Metals dull or brighten, jewels deepen or fade. In 1992, a curator at the British Museum recorded that the sapphire in Henry VI's sword flared like a coal under UV light, though the bulb was cool to the touch. The report vanished from official archives, but survives in a personal diary, ending with the note, "Objects remember what we forget. Time, it seems, cannot erase intention." The same instruments once used to anoint kings or execute heretics now rest beneath soft velvet, yet they still radiate unease. Not because they are evil, but because they are honest. They have seen what we prefer to hide, how quickly faith turns to fear and loyalty to betrayal. Every century mistakes itself for the enlightened one. Every generation believes it has tamed its ghosts. But as long as these relics exist, the past will keep whispering through glass and gold, reminding us that history is not buried. It is displayed, polished, and mislabeled as progress. Behind every exhibit stands someone who knows too much. Curators, historians, archivists, keepers of the dead, sworn to silence by contracts and superstition alike. Among them are whispers of a private registry, one never digitized, where the most troublesome relics are recorded not by photograph but by description written in careful ink. They call it the Book of Shadows, though officially it has no name. In 1974, a senior archivist at the Tower of London named Edwin Marchant wrote a letter to a friend in Florence. It was never sent. Found decades later inside a locked drawer, the letter describes a collection recently moved from royal storage, objects that resist categorization. He listed a dagger wrapped in human hair, a cracked coronation orb that pulsed faintly in darkness, and a glass vial half filled with dust, labeled only consort's breath. Marchant wrote that he heard whispers while cataloging them, as if someone were dictating from the other side of the page. 2 weeks later, he resigned without explanation. The following year, a new curator discovered his journal. The entries ended abruptly after a single line. They don't like to be numbered. Officials dismissed the note as delusion brought on by overwork. The relics were reboxed, resealed, forgotten again. Still, stories circulate among museum staff. An assistant fainting when she lifted a reliquary said to contain a monarch tooth. A night guard refusing to enter Gallery 12 after hearing slow footsteps behind glass. Cameras show nothing, but audio records a faint ticking, like the beat of an unseen heart. Archivists have a superstition: never polish a royal artifact after sunset. The reasoning is practical, metal contracts in the cold, but the truth is older. They believe that after dark, the relics wake, remembering the weight of ceremony, the taste of human awe. When dawn returns, they fall silent again, their hunger sated by attention. Across the world, other keepers tell the same stories. In St. Petersburg, a restorer saw his reflection blink inside Catherine the Great's mirror. In Vienna, a historian researching Habsburg regalia vanished for 3 days, later found sleeping in the archive's basement with his hands folded as if in prayer. He remembered nothing except a single phrase carved into the dust beside him. "We are not gone." Perhaps Marchant was right. Perhaps the objects resist classification because they were never meant to be tamed. History tries to label, measure, and display them, but memory cannot be curated. It can only be endured. And so the archivists keep their secrets, guarding relics that still breathe through glass, watching the watchers, waiting for the moment when curiosity outweighs caution and another hand reaches for the past. Every kingdom leaves behind its ghosts, but the cruelest ones wear gold. The relics of monarchy, crowns, daggers, rosaries, portraits framed in bone, still whisper beneath the hum of modern life. We call them history, yet they are more like mirrors. Look long enough into them, and you begin to see the reflection of your own hunger for power, your own fascination with ruin. They say museums are safe places, sanctuaries where the past lies quiet. But step into a gallery after closing, when the lights are dimmed and footsteps echo through marble halls, and you will feel it, the weight of eyes that no longer blink. Every relic watches, not with malice but with memory. Each has been touched by ambition and blood, by prayers spoken too late. They do not forget, even when we do. A curator once described standing before the crown of a long-dead king and feeling a sudden heaviness, as if invisible hands had placed it upon his own head. "It wasn't evil," he said. "It was grief. Grief for what power costs. Grief for how easily we repeat the same mistakes wrapped in finer metal. The relics endure because we need them to. They remind us that even beauty can be a kind of violence. The gem mined from a wound in the earth. The robe dyed in the blood of snails. The sword polished until it forgets what it was forged for. Each object carries the echo of labor and loss, of someone unseen paying the price for someone else's glory. One day, perhaps centuries from now, future archaeologists will uncover our own trophies, our crowns of circuitry, our thrones of screens, and they will feel the same chill. They will wonder how we worshipped progress, yet built our temples on suffering. The pattern will continue until we learn to see relics, not as possessions, but as confessions. So, when you next stand before a royal artifact glinting beneath glass, don't ask what it's worth. Ask what it remembers. Listen for the silence that follows. It's the same silence that filled the throne rooms after execution, the same that settled over plague pits and battlefields. That silence is history breathing in. If this story followed you into the dark tonight, let it linger. These relics may have lost their kings, but not their truth. And perhaps that is the heaviest relic of all, the memory that refuses to fade, reminding us that power, no matter how divine it pretends to be, always ends in human hands, because some truths deserve to be remembered, no matter how much they hurt.